يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي وروحي أحرفي ولساني.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. ما بعد. Inshallah, we'll continue with our discussion regards to Qurbani, its virtues, laws, significance. Last week we spoke about what more? The wisdom, the philosophy behind Qurbani, and there's much more than slaughtering. The virtues, we dealt with the virtues upon whom Qurbani is obligatory. We mentioned that. The steps in calculating to see whether a person has to do Qurbani or not. Just like you have what the steps in calculating zakah, there are steps in calculating to see whether a person in a Qurbani is obligatory upon him or not. We did that. Alright, planning for Qurbani. We mentioned also that Qurbani, even though it may not be obligatory upon an individual, but if it is what? Not difficult upon him and he does what? A Qurbani, then it is something that is rewarded. Alright? Not because something is not fard upon a person, he just leaves it out. Right? As we mentioned, if it's not difficult upon him, he does it. Right? As we mentioned, a person many times there are many people who perform Hajj multiple times. Person perform Hajj 5, 6 times, 10 times, except that the first Hajj is fard. After the first Hajj, everything else is what? Is optional. Even though you might pay, the first Hajj may cost less than what? The fifth one, or the second one. The first Hajj is obligatory. After that, everything else was optional, nafil. Alright, but people still go. Why? Because of the rewards and the rewards in Hajj. Alright. So similarly, if Qurbani is not obligatory upon a person, he still does it without any difficulty and hardship upon him, it is something that is rewarding. Alright. I don't know if you mentioned how a person could plan. We mentioned that? How much he saves for the week? We mentioned that? We mentioned it? Okay. This was actually for the students. We taught the students. Right? Students don't have any work. Right? They don't have any work. Right? So we asked them how much money they get for the day, for the week to spend. They mentioned, most of them mentioned $100 for the week, $10 for the day. Right? So if a student save $30, right? This is just snacks because again the food as normal. You save $30 not for the day, for the week, $30 for the week. Alright? A person not working, $30 for the week. 30 by 52, say 30 by 52 weeks what? 52 weeks in a year, say 50. Right? They get $1,500 easy. And each time is get a top up to anyhow. Alright? And it's a person who's not working. So a person, whatever we want to achieve, that person has that desire and makes that plan. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal, when He speaks about Jannah, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةِ, a person he longs for the akhirah, he desires Jannah, right? But it doesn't stop there. وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا, but he makes the correct effort for that. He makes effort for it, inshallah. Allah Azza wa Jalla will grant that individual. Right. So if Qurbani is compulsory upon an individual, you understand? One Qurbani would suffice one individual. Right? Many a times we hear, this Qurbani, this sheep is for me and my wife. Right? This is for the household. No. Each person will check and see whether Qurbani is obligatory upon him or not. So if Qurbani, for example, is obligatory upon both husband and wife independently, then each of them, that is a separate Qurbani for each. Right? So the husband has a Qurbani, the wife has a Qurbani, right? A person did mention You know what, last year I did Qurbani for my wife, today this year I will do for me, or vice versa. Yeah, last year I did for me, this year I'm going to do for my wife. No, if it was obligatory upon you last year, yes, you had to do it last year. Similarly, if it's obligatory upon you this year, you have to do it this year. So it's not like, okay, 1 year for you and 1 year for me. No. Zakah obligatory upon a person last year, he paid last year. Obligatory upon him this year, he paid this year. Right? So each individual what there is calculated separately, right? It's calculated separately, and one share would what suffice for what? One individual. Similarly, if a person wants to do multiple shares, he wants to do 3-4 goats, right? 3-4 sheep, right? That is okay, except that the first one would be what is, or the first one would be his fard Qurbani. So if he slaughters 5 sheep, right? 5 sheep he slaughters. Right, the first one would be what is Qurbani, or one would be his Qurbani, and the other what? The remainers would be what? Nafil Qurbani. The first would be his what? Obligatory Qurbani, Wajib Qurbani, and the others would be what? Optional Qurbani. Now?
Yeah, this question is something we discussed last week. We were talking about somebody else goes for Hajj, and Qurbani is still obligatory upon.
If there's a resident, yeah.
So let's say they weren't aware of it and they didn't know. Now that they know, they want to do this now. Well, we know that if you have an animal, you could give it in sadaqah, or you could give the money in sadaqah. Now we have the money, let me say we're using that money one. We want to give the money in sadaqah. You have a sheep is about 1,500 and up. Share in Apple is about 2,000. Or our share in India is like $200. Which is it okay for them to say, well, okay, a share in India is $200, I'll give that $200.
Once it is done, understand whether a person does it here, understand Qurbani could be done anywhere. India, Pakistan, Trinidad, anywhere Qurbani could be done. The slaughtering for Hajj is done in the precincts of the Haram, right? There's restriction that must be done over there. Right, that is slaughtering for Hajj. As for Qurbani, Qurbani can be done anywhere, right? And as you rightly mentioned, yes, after the days of Qurbani has gone, the days of slaughtering, the 10th, 11th, and 12th, there's no slaughtering, right? There's no slaughtering afterwards, right? The qadha for Qurbani would be what? Give the entire animal to the poor, or its value, or the value of a share of 1/7 of a bull that is given to the poor, right? A person missed a salah, yes, he can make up for that salah, right? A person what? He didn't pay zakah last year, yeah, he pays zakah this year. You understand this? That person what? Has he missed a fast in the month of Ramadan for whatever reason, right? He'll fast what? The same way afterwards, right? Except for Qurbani. A person what? Misses Qurbani. Qurbani was obligatory upon him and he didn't do Qurbani, right? So the qadha of Qurbani is not slaughtering, right? What it means, listen, say last year a person Qurbani was obligatory upon him last year and he didn't do it. So this year now, right, I'm taking 2 shares. One for what? One for Qurbani this year and one for a qadha missed Qurbani last year. No, it don't work like that, right? There's no slaughtering. Understand, after what the days of slaughtering has gone, there's no more slaughtering. For example, a person has an animal. He has an animal for Qurbani and for whatever reason he didn't slaughter it. Right, 10th, 11th, and 12th, khalas, finish. He still has that animal. So what are you going to do now? That person will then give that entire animal in sadaqah. There's no slaughtering after the days of slaughtering. If he happens to slaughter it, the entire animal will still go in sadaqah. Right? So back, what they just mentioned over there, yes, you give it anywhere, right? Once you're sure that it will be done, right? Because the class has been recorded over here, this whole thing about India, right, sending money to India, right, we'll do that probably in the car park or something, alright. Just look and see what happened in India right now, this year, last year, the previous years, right? Muslims getting beaten and what? Killed for what? Hey, you have possession of beef. Where in India you could go outside and slaughter what? Cows and things, publicly. Why you could do that? Ask the people who collected the money for what? Shares in India, where exactly they do it, right? They will send you pictures of what? They always send you pictures of animals, right? This is the Qurbani animal, right? See if anybody ever send you pictures of animals, okay, skin cut up, this, that, what being slaughtered. And ask them where it has been slaughtered. oh, in this area where nobody's really see. Okay, so after you slaughter, okay, what are you doing all the meat then? Oh, we had to ship it out. Any secretly? This one. Yeah, what are you doing in your Qurbani? If all that you have to, you're putting people in trouble. Right? You understand? So we're not saying, okay, yes, there may be certain places, wallahu a'lam, right? But you analyze the situation yourself and see. Alright? You see over here, okay, people doing what? If they're doing Qurbani over here, at least you can make a video and okay, this is what we're doing, and you're seeing your slaughter and this and that. You'll never see that over there. I don't know if anybody ever would come across any videos, right? Any pictures where okay, animals have been slaughtered, meat processed, bagged, this and that, right? We're not saying it's not happening, but you have to be certain. You understand? We have to be certain if it actually taking place and how it taking place. All right? And many a times people advertise Qurbani as what? Helping the poor. Right? This is a misconception. Qurbani, understand? Qurbani is slaughtering. You want to help the poor, send charity, you send money for them. All right? And most of these bookings, you'll find them online too. Right? So people understand, many non-Muslims, they like to patronize. So many people advertise Qurbani in these poor countries as what? They're helping the poor and get, the poor would benefit and this and that. Okay, this is secondary. Alright? So now you have what? You click and you send what? You put your PayPal or your credit card and you send what? Some shares to India, right? Who in your bull? If John now looking with now, then people looking real poor boy. I take a share too, right? I send some money, right? So you have Zaid, Bakr, Umar, Talha, Khalid, right? And the seventh one is what? John, in that bowl, right? And Qurbani also, when we speak about the obligation, we mentioned last class, how does a person know or determine he has what Qurbani is obligatory upon him or not, right? So we spoke about how you calculate, right? Now, many a times I hear people say, you know what, this year I'm not doing Qurbani, I get too old for that. Yeah, I get too old. Qurbani has about age, right? You don't have to be physically able to hold a bull, slaughter a bull, right? Or a sheep or a goat or anything like that, right? Just like what? Zakah. You could be lying on a bed, bedridden, right? You have to pay zakah. That has nothing to do with your physical health. Similarly, Qurbani has nothing to do with your physical health. So much so Hajj. A person what? For Hajj to be obligatory upon a person, right? His physical health is not taken into account, is not what? Considered. What does that mean? If a person has the means, but he's what? Bedridden, he's sick, khalas, he cannot what? Actually perform the actions of Hajj, it still becomes obligatory upon him, and he will do what? Hajj badal, somebody will do on his behalf. Right? So similarly, Qurbani, that is the case. A person doesn't have to be physically able, or able-bodied person for Qurbani to be obligatory upon him. No. And many times I hear also, right? We hear plenty. I'm not doing Qurbani this year. Doctor say I can't eat red meat. Yeah, I can't eat red meat again. I stay away from. That has nothing to do with what you eat and what you don't eat, right? Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا. The blood, the meat doesn't reach Allah Azza wa Jal. It has nothing to do with the blood and the meat. Qurbani is what? The mere slaughtering, right? That is whatever you want to do with the meat. You can eat all the meat if you want. You can give away all the meat you want. Whatever you want to do with the meat, that is optional, right? Qurbani is what? The slaughtering. So a person not able, what? He authorized an individual to do, or organization to do on his behalf.
So this thing I is here when you should keep wanting to yourself, keep wanting to be poor.
No, that's something good, right? There's no compulsion, nothing mandatory in that. Something good, you keep for yourself, you give to the poor, right? This didn't come in the hadith of the Prophet, the fuqaha, the jurists, they mention that, you know what, this is meat, so you know what, yes, you partake from it, yes, you give some to your friends and your family, and you give a portion to the poor, right? But if a person gives what, the entire share to the poor, that is most rewarding, right? If a person what keeps all for himself, that is what? Permissible. He's not sinful, right? And on this point over here, you know, if a person normally eats what? Qurbani meat, right? He normally eats what? Qurbani, meaning what? Beef, goat, sheep, them thing, right? You normally eat it and understand this is what? Blessed meat. You understand? This is blessed meat, this is better than meat you're buying from Nisa. Now these stun animals that come in, all this red meat that comes into the country, stun animal, right? That is a thing by itself. Okay, we're not saying it's not permissible, but when a person doing Qurbani, how he treats the animal, how he slaughters, right? All these sunnah aspects is what taken into consideration. Some people think that what only Qurbani time you treat the animal good. Yeah, and you sharpen the knife, right? And then what you don't cause extra what harm on the animal and this and that. That is slaughtering throughout, not only for Qurbani. But the thing about it, only at Qurbani time we adhere to these what sunnah and these sunnah aspects and practices with regard to slaughtering, right? Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentioned that Allah Azza wa Jal katab al-ihsan fi kulli shay. Everything that Allah Azza wa Jal, he orders, right? He prescribes what? That Allah Azza wa Jal prescribes what? He loves what you call any ihsan, any perfection in it. Alright? And when he speaks about perfection, even in what slaughter the animal, فَلْيُحِدَّ شُفْرَتَهُ, then sharpen the knife properly so be less pain on the animal, right? So this is what we do for Qurbani. But when we buy meat in the grocery, how you kill that animal? A bolt is what? Shot in the head of the animal. A bolt is shot in the head of the animal, right, before the animal is slaughtered. Right? So if you want blessed meat, that is your Qurbani meat. Right? The most blessed and Mubarak meat if you could get right now is what? Your Qurbani meat. Alright? So don't just give away all and afterwards go and buy what? Stun meat. Rahimahullah. Naam. No, it's blessed meat. Understand? One is done on the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, right? Where he mentioned, Ma amila ibnu Adam amalan yawma nahri ahabba ila Allah ta'ala min iraqatid dam. When Nabi Aisha mentioned what the son of Adam, there's no more action more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal on the day of Nahar, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of slaughtering, except that of what? Slaughtering Qurbani. Right? So if that slaughtering is something blessed, obviously what the animal will be something blessed. Right? Every single hair, the Prophet Aisha mentioned, every single hair, one reward. And here what we do with the hair, what we throw away that hair, things that you don't even use, you get reward for it. So if every single hair you get a reward, every strand of wool you get a reward, it means every single drop of blood, every strand of hair, every aspect of that animal is what? Rewarded. That is a Mubarak. Blessed animal, blessed meat. Alright? And if it's one time, as you mentioned, if it's one time a person will adhere to all these sunnah aspects of slaughtering, is Qurbani time. Otherwise, what? Mass production, who looking at all these sunnah aspects? Now, Qurbani on behalf of the deceased. Right? If Allah Azza wa Jal favors a person with extra wealth, right? And he wants to do what? Qurbani, right, on behalf of the deceased, then this is also correct, right? This is valid, right? But understand here, a person, if Qurbani is obligatory upon himself, he must do for himself, right? You know what? I want to do for my mother, my grandmother this year, you know. I was going to leave last year, I do for myself. No, last year was as you mentioned, last year was obligatory upon you, so I had to do it. This year, if it is obligatory upon you, you have to do it. You have what? Extra what? You have extra what? Funds, right? And you want to do what? Nafil Qurbani on behalf of what? The deceased, then a person is allowed to do that, right? That would be allowed, right? Understand carefully. If it is a wajib Qurbani, then one person, that is what? Khalas, will suffice for one individual. If it is nafil, and many people understand this, right? If it is what nafil, an optional qurbani, you're doing a second qurbani, a second share or a second animal, that is optional. With this, you could include any amount of people. Grandma, grandpa, uncle, the neighbor next door, any Muslim. You understand? It's not that, okay, you have to have a sheep, right? A sheep for what? Nanny, a sheep for Nana, and then what? This uncle, you have to have a whole farm because all these people deceased and close to you. No. One would suffice, right? No, it can be living also. Living also. But it's optional. Understand? It's optional. Right? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he slaughtered what? 2 ram. Right? When he slaughtered it was Hada an Muhammad. This is what? Qurbani on behalf of what? Himself, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he slaughtered the second one, Hada an Ummati. Khalas, the second nafil qurbani share is what? Qurbani is what? For the entire ummah. Alright? Nobody specified living or dead. Understand? Optional. This comes under what? The bab of any isal, any thawab. Right? The rewards for the qurbani would go to these people. Right? You make dua, you recite Quran, khalas, you send what? You send the rewards to what? One individual. Right? So then afterwards, if you have to what? Send to our next individual, recite more. No, khalas, you make intention for what? Type X, Y, and Z. Allahumma gfir li Zayd. Oh Allah, forgive Zayd. Allahumma gfir li Abi Zayd. Oh Allah, forgive my father Zayd. Type. You can stop there. Right? Allahumma gfir li jami' al-mu'minina wal-mu'minat. Al-Muslimina wal-Muslimat, Al-Ahya minhum wal-Amwat. Khalas. Oh Allah, forgive all the Muslims, men and women, living and dead. The rahmah of Allah Azza wa Jalla is what? Is vast. You understand? So yes, if it is obligatory upon you, you have to khalas. That is one. But if it is optional, you want to do on behalf of what? This one, this and that one, then khalas, one share would suffice. Right? Even what? A person can even include Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in that share. If a person wants to do a share on behalf of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, it is not necessary it be what? A separate share from what? His other deceased relatives. Friends or relatives. Right? All that is included. You know, we do Qurbani, right, at the masjid there. So before we had long names, right? And this one deceased, that one deceased, husband, uncle, mother, father, a whole ball, right? Hey, listen, you don't need to do all. Understand if you do this, good. Nothing wrong with that, right? Khalas, nothing wrong with that. And they get more meter share for the people, this for the poor. Nothing wrong with that, right? But it's not a condition. One share would suffice for all of these people, right? One share would suffice for all of these people. There's what? In one scenario, understand here, there are 2 scenarios what we just mentioned here. One is you doing it on behalf of the deceased, right? From your own wealth. From your own wealth, you do it on behalf of a deceased, any relative, family, friend, right? That, you could what? You could include multiple people in that, right? With your intention. And also that meat, you could do whatever you want with it. You can store it, you can keep it, you can share it, whatever you want to do. That's like yours, right? Whatever you do with yours, right? That is this. The second scenario is where what? A person in his lifetime, right? He makes a wasiyah, right? He makes a wasiyah. He leaves instructions. When I die, do a qurbani. Perform a qurbani on my behalf. So he left instruction. This falls under wasiyah, right? This falls under any wasiyah. So if what 1/3 of the net estate could finance it, then khalas will be taken from his estate. This will be taken from his estate because of his instructions. Now, if this qurbani is done, then all of its meat will be given to the poor. It is taken from his wealth, his estate, right? Because of his instructions. So in a case like this now, the entire share or the entire animal would go to the poor. Now, so we mentioned that what? nafil qurbani, it include what, right? Now, whether it be what, understand here, a wajib qurbani or a nafil qurbani, understand, the shareholder must be what? One. Alright? You don't have more than one person in a share. Whether that share be what, an optional qurbani or a wajib qurbani, the shareholder is one. Alright? The shareholder in all cases, all circumstances, what? Is one. As for the recipients, meaning what, the beneficiaries, if you want to call them beneficiaries, because they would benefit, alright? The beneficiaries for what? The nafil qurbani, right? It could be multiple, but the shareholder is one, right? For example, listen, you have what? A sheep is $2,000, alright? So there are two people want to do qurbani. Right, so one have 1,000, next have 1,000. Hey, we chip up and do qurbani now. We put up and do qurbani, right? So would that be valid? Two people putting up $1,000 each to do qurbani and what? Whether it be a sheep or a share, right? That would not be valid, right? Why? Because a sheep is khalas. There is only one shareholder you can have in a sheep, right? 1/7 of a bull, right? Is only one shareholder you can have, right? So you don't chip up. Right, you don't chip up to the qurbani, right? What you could do, right? You have Zaid and Bakar. Each of them has what? 1,000 each, right? Zaid could give Bakar 1,000. Khalas, you take that, right? He becomes the owner. Now the share becomes his, and he does the qurbani, right? That would work, right? We don't chip up to do qurbani. Why? Because if you have a bull, right? If you have a bull, and now that bull has what? You have 6 people already finished, for example, right? And you have one person, right? One share, 2 people what? 2 people participated. Then you have 8 people in a bull. That would not be valid, right? That would not be valid. Spoil everybody. Right? But it's simple, right? Make one person the shareholder, make him the owner, right? He is the owner of what? The share. Yes, and he would intend for your grandmother too, because then you want to do for your grandmother, khalas, he would intend for what? His grandmother and your grandmother. Because that is why you want to do the optional share, right? So the deceased will be benefited, right? So you intend for all these what? All these deceased, right? Well, what important, the shareholder must be what? One, right? And a sheep there's one, and a share there's one. Alright, for example, that person has what? He has what? Normally, he wants to do a bull for his entire family, right? Understand? He has qurbani, he wants to do a bull what? For his entire family. So him, his wife, and this and that, and whatever, and one share remaining, right? So you know what? All he has to do is what? Listen, he has 2 shares, right? And one for his wife, one for his daughter, one for his son, and this and that, khalas, that finished. And he has 2 shares. Right? So one would be for his what? Wajib qurbani, and the second share is his what? Optional qurbani, and he could intend whoever he wants. Right? Whoever he wants, he can intend. Right? But you don't want to have a situation where you're chipping up, 2-3 people chipping up, right, to own one share, right? To own one share, one animal. Alright? Can a person do what? Right, so the thing about qurbani, right? If qurbani is not obligatory upon a person, right? Qurbani is not obligatory upon a person, right? But if that person what? He insists that he does qurbani, right? What happens? He makes it obligatory upon himself. You understand? You make that qurbani obligatory upon yourself. You understand? Salah is not what? Nafil salah not obligatory upon you, nobody, right? But the moment you start, Allahu Akbar, it becomes obligatory to what? To complete it, right? Fasting not what? These what? Hajj, right? You know what? It's not obligatory, but khalas, you started, you have to finish it. So sometimes what? Qurbani may not be obligatory upon an individual, right? But by purchasing an animal, right, and intending to do Qurbani in the days of what? The days of slaughtering 10, 11th and 12th, he makes it obligatory upon himself. Alright, so that's his Qurbani.
Why I ask that is that if it was so, a person could have done the knuckle and join with somebody else and do knuckle and include himself in it also together with partner. I don't follow what I'm saying.
Okay, he is nafil. Understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is what? Okay, the moment you do that, right, you pay for a share, you sort out an animal and this and that on the days of what? Understand? On the days of slaughtering 10th, 11th and 12th, right, it becomes obligatory because you make it obligatory upon yourself. It wasn't obligatory, now you make it obligatory upon yourself. So it becomes your Qurbani. It becomes like your obligatory Qurbani because you made it obligatory upon yourself. Right? That is why you see the Fuqaha they would mention a person purchased an animal, right? He purchased an animal and the animal died. Right? He purchased an animal with the intent of Qurbani. For example, he purchased a goat with the intent of Qurbani. Right? The animal died. Right? The Fuqaha, the jurors, they mention, does this animal does it have to be replaced or not? Animal dead, but I spent $2,000 for the sheep, the animal dead, gone. Alright? So here now, they mention, they look at the condition of the person. If Qurbani was obligatory upon that individual, then he will have to replace that animal. If Qurbani was not obligatory upon that individual, this is his obligation here. He made it obligatory upon himself by buying this animal. Now this animal died, he doesn't have to replace it. You understand? He doesn't have to replace it. So if understand the point, if Qurbani is not obligatory upon a person, but a person what? Right? If a person what made it obligatory upon himself, then khalas. A person what, for example, Hajj also. The second Hajj is what? Nafil. But the moment a person adorns, enters ihram for what? Hajj. And I don't make a Hajj. You have to complete it out. Right? You have to complete that Hajj. Or at least do the acts of any Umrah. Anyhow, so that's the ruling. So right, so even though it's what? Nafil, it's not okay, it is nafil now, so I can include myself and include what? Fulan in the same one. No. Right, but if you want, your intent is what? This Qurbani is what? You do not be, this is what? This is for what? Fulan and Fulan, right? Your grandmother, your anybody, right? This is what? On their behalf. Then khalas.
So if you want to take that money and give it to somebody who will not compulsory Qurbani, you give them that money and say, well, I'm giving you this and you could take an next share or as an actual share and do it for whoever you want.
Again?
Alright, so
That from his one,
he don't have to do Qurbani.
Uh-huh.
But he partner do Qurbani first.
Uh-huh.
So if he take that money and if he partner now and say what, do a second Qurbani and until now, partner could do an until already. Do it now first.
Uh-huh.
Right? So he could take that money now and do an until and include all the people that he wants to include.
Alright, listen, right? Okay, we understand. You know, when a person understand here, a person what? Look at the difference here. A person, Qurbani not obligatory upon a person, right? But a person does Qurbani, right? And one is that, okay, somebody does Qurbani on behalf of what? Somebody. Understand, there's a world of difference between the heavens and the earth, right? The reward you're going to get for that Qurbani, right? And the reward that person going to get, okay, upon receiving the rewards is a big difference, right? If you know that reward, you do it for yourself, yes, and make dua or other things that that could probably benefit the deceased, right? But you don't want to what chance, what I get opportunity to do Qurbani and I would give that money to somebody else and he do it and what include this one and that one. No, khalas, you do that, right? Do that for yourself, right? You get opportunity to make Hajj. You know what? I'll give it to somebody who can make any Hajj on behalf of no, right? Understand? The rahmah, the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and the rewards of Allah Azza wa Jalla, that is unlimited, right? Is unlimited. And this, understand, you, right, just, sometimes we just want that when we die, people do this for us and that for us, right? Listen, you do an action and make intention, any action you give some charity, then even khalas, charity come on what? In sunnah, right? In the hadith of the Prophet Islam. You give some charity and you intend that what? The rewards go to the deceased father. Khalas, it would go, inshallah, if the conditions there, right? But that no way comparable if what? That deceased in his lifetime, he did that charity. You understand? The rewards he would get for that charity, khalas, it's more than that. Why he's given charity from his money, right? You given from yours, right? So inshallah, yes, he would receive something, he would receive, but not, right? You recite what? The entire what? Quran, right? And you make dua that what? That the thawab, the rewards would reach what? Fulan. Yes, inshallah, if what the conditions are there, right? But what they would get, khalas, is no way comparable to what you would get for after reciting the Quran, right? And sometimes we just feel, they more in need than us. And why we just feel that? They more in need of what? Rewards and virtues than us. We more in need. Listen, we more in need. When that person dies and Salat al-Janazah is performed, yes, we know Salat al-Janazah is for that individual. But khalas, but what dua we make? Allahumma aghfir li hayyina, we more in need, the living more in need of that dua than the deceased. That is why we mention, Allah forgive the living and forgive me, forgive us. And then we mention what? The deceased, right? So khalas, don't forget yourself. Right? Understand there are many other acts a person can do, right? Even though, listen, a person what? According to what? The ulama, any action a person does, nafil, fard, whatever, he could intend what? Any salah, any thawab. Whether something that door you want to open, every salah you perform, every act you do, khalas, Allah send you reward to this one, that one, khalas, But the ulama mention that any action a person does, whether it be what? Fard, wajib, nafil, mustahab, mandub, mubah, khalas, he intends that isal yani thawab, that the rewards be gifted to fulan, inshallah, it would go. Now, right, so the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the most vast thing. Khalas, it encompasses every single thing, right? That's why a person entered the masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, a Bedouin Arab, right? Khalas, we know the Bedouin Arabs, how they are. So he entered the masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, right? And he said, Allahumma aghfirli wa Muhammadan wa la taghfir ma'ana ahadan. Or he mentioned, Allahumma arhamni wa Muhammadan wa la tarham ma'ana ahadan. Oh Allah, forgive me and Muhammad, and don't forgive nobody beside us. Right? Because the incident occurred in the masjid and he was not happy. Right? And he made this dua. Right? Oh Allah, forgive me and Muhammad, and don't forgive nobody else. Right? So the Nabi mentioned, laqad hajjarta wasi'an. You have restricted that which is so vast. Right? So vast. So the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal rewards, khalas, there's no limit to that. Now, understand, you actually slaughtered. If you look at the rewards, right, the most beloved action is khalas, when you slaughter, the slaughter is done on your behalf. Khalas, you is the shareholder, you are the mudahi, right? Yes, what you do afterwards, the intention to give this one and that is secondary, right? But if a person comes to know that reward, khalas. Right. Qurbani and Hajj, I think we did that, right? Qurbani and Hajj, understand there are three types of Hajj. Hajj yani al-ifrad, al-tamattu' and qiran. right? Ifrad, tamattu and qiran. Normally what? Hajj, yani people what? Normally people who perform any Hajj, yani tamattu. Right? Hajj, yani ifrad, the person performing is called yani mufrid. What he does, he goes just to perform what? He just perform any Hajj, bus. Right? Ihram for Hajj, and he does the actions of Hajj and completes Hajj, bus. Yani al-mutamatti, a person performing Hajj, yani tamattu, what he does, he goes and he performs what? Umrah and Hajj. Right? He performs Umrah with one Ihram, khalas, and he comes out of that Ihram, shave everything, and waits for the day of Hajj, and adorn Ihram for Hajj, and what? Perform Hajj. Alright? So one journey, right? Umrah and Hajj in two separate Ihram. You have Hajj, yani al-Qiran, the person is called yani Qarin. He performs Umrah and Hajj, right? Umrah and Hajj with one Ihram. He enters he adorns Ihram, his intent, Allahumma inni uridu al-umrata wal-hajj. His intent is Umrah and Hajj. So he performs the actions of Umrah, yani al-tawaf, sa'i bayna al-safa wal-marwa, except he doesn't shave, he doesn't come with the state of Ihram. Thereafter, with the days of Hajj, now khalas, he will make tawaf qudum, and he will do what? The actions of Hajj with that same in Ihram. That mutamatti' and that what? Qarin, slaughtering for them on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, which is the day of Qurbani, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, their slaughtering is what? Is wajib. They have to slaughter, right? And their slaughtering is what? This is not Qurbani. This is dam yani shukr, right? This is dam shukr, slaughtering of gratitude for having what? For Allah Azza wa Jal having afforded them what? The opportunity to perform any Hajj and Umrah. Umrah and Hajj. That has nothing to do with Qurbani. As for Hajj, that what? Ifrad, that mufrid, his slaughtering for Hajj is optional. If he wants to, khalas, he can slaughter. If he doesn't want, no. Right? But those who do it, qiran and tamattu, then we have what? These what? The sequence is what? Wajib. Pelting first, then you have what? Slaughtering and then shaving. Right? The sequence are khalas. But the point here is what? Their slaughtering is wajib, except their slaughtering is not Qurbani. That is specific to Hajj. Right? When you speak about the Qurbani being obligatory upon a person, we speak about the Qirad, Nisab and this and that. And in addition to that is what? That person is what? A muqim. He's a resident. Right? He's a resident. And a person is, understand, if a person is a musafir, then what? He would perform 2 rakah salah. Jum'ah is not obligatory upon him. Qurbani is not obligatory upon him. If he does it, good. If he doesn't do it, it's not sinful. Right? And like that. But if he is a muqim, a resident, then it is obligatory upon him. Then a person would ask a question. If a man from here going quite Saudi, how are you going to be a what? A resident? Alright? Yes, understand, we did laws of safar over here. Right? A person undertakes any such a journey, and upon reaching what? His destination, he intends to stay 15 days or more, then he will become a temporary resident. Right? A temporary resident has the same rules of a permanent resident with regards to fasting in the month of Ramadan, yani Qurbani, Salah, you perform your complete 4 rakah, right? Just like a normal resident, right? A temporary resident. So a person would be staying in Makkah for that period of time, right? Then khalas, he would become a muqim. And if he's a muqim and he has any sabah and whatever, he has to do what? Qurbani. Yes, he has a choice as to where he wants to do it, right? Back in Trinidad, right? You send $200, right? Whoever you want to do it, right? Whoever you want to do it, that is done properly, then khalas, you have that, right? So if a person, you know what, I wouldn't be there for Qurbani, so I don't have to do, no. Right? You look at the conditions we mentioned earlier. Now, the day, anybody have any question? No. The time of slaughtering, so we slaughter on the 10th, 11th, and 12th of Dhul Hijjah, 740, right? So these are the days of slaughtering, except that what, as we mentioned, the most virtuous day is that of, is what, the 10th, right? Is the 10th. It doesn't mean that it is makruh and disliked to slaughter on the 11th and the 12th. No, that is jaiz and permissible. We're talking about most virtuous, right? The most virtuous is what the 10th. It doesn't mean that what the 11th and 12th is what makruh and dislike and no, right? It is allowed and permissible. And inshallah, person, inshallah, he will get his rewards, right? But if you want the best, right? That is what we want, the best and the most rewarding, right? It would be what? The 10th, right? So the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. So the timing is what? The first day, the 10th of the Hijjah, and that slaughtering starts from what? The time of what? Ishraq, right? We know what is Ishraq, about 12 to 15 minutes after sunrise. Salat al-Ishraq is where it starts, right? وَأَشْرَقَتِ الشَّمْسِ, right? It starts from this time. This is the beginning time. Except that a person not allowed to slaughter, and then we mentioned this last class, a person not allowed to slaughter except what? That Salat al-Eid has been performed. Right? Nabi alayhi salam mentioned, "Man dhahha qabla al-Eid fahuwa ta'amun yuqaddimuha li ahli." A person slaughters what before Salat al-Eid, then it's khalas, it's halal, right? It's halal, the meat is halal, but this is just food you put on the table for your family. It's not Qurbani. This is not Qurbani if it is slaughtered before Salat al-Eid. But understand what is meant here, right? At the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, how much Eid you had? How much places had Eid? Right? So khalas. And a place where what? And a time where there's multiple what? Eid Salah being performed in a locality. Right? Eid Salah, there's multiple Eid Salah being performed in a locality. Then what? The first one, the first Salah and he performed, then khalas, that will give Allah once so what? For slaughtering an entire area, the entire district. For example here, just say here, Salat al-Eid is what? 8 o'clock. Alright? Salat al-Eid is 8 o'clock and what? Al-Falah is what? 7 o'clock. Right? So now those who come into this masjid, it doesn't mean that they cannot slaughter until what? They perform Salat al-Eid. No, once Salat al-Eid has been performed in the area, khalas, it will give the allowance for everyone to slaughter, right, in that area. Right? You could what? If that's the case, you could slaughter and come to mosque. Right? I don't slaughter and everybody busy going back, hey, hurry to go back to home and slaughter. Right? So it doesn't mean that whatever masjid you're going to, right, you're slaughtering any is how you call it, any connected to that. Right? Your slaughtering is what? Contingent to what? The timing of their salah. No. Once salah has been performed in that area, right, then
if I have a prayer 6 o'clock in the morning, we could slaughter after the prayer and we could have a prayer just before Jummah.
but 6 o'clock, remember what? Ishraq is when? Sunrise now is what? 6:30, not so? Right? So listen, how it looking like this year? Either Friday or Saturday? Alright? Either Friday or Saturday. Friday would be a very hectic day with Eid, with the slaughtering and this and that, and Jumu'ah. Alright? So you have to work it out and see. Right? Understand? The sunnah for Salatul Eid, especially Eid al-Adha. The sunnah is what happened the earliest time. Awwal ma nabda'u bihi. Nabi Isa mentioned the first that we start the day with khalas is what? Slaughtering. Meaning what? And a person cannot slaughter except after salah. So it means that salah very early. Right? Listen, Eid al-Fitr, they dress up and this and that now. Khalas, take your time and whatever. This day is what? And you know what? No long talk. Right?
If you miss the salah.
If you miss the salah, yeah, the salah has no connection with what the slaughtering is. So if you miss the salah, khalas, you miss what a wajib act, right? Except that would not nullify that would not affect his slaughtering, his qurbani, right? And many a times these people come for qurbani, for Eid al-Adha, which is good, but when they think, hey, I do taking a share, I do qurbani, so I have to come, I must come, right? No, you don't have what? That has no connection. But yes, Salatul Eid is wajib, so you should come, right? But it has nothing to do with your slaughtering, right?
So if you miss the salah, you take qada.
No, there's no qada for Eid, right? Some fuqaha they mentioned khalas, they perform 2 rakat, nafil or whatever, but there's no qada for Eid. There's no qada for Eid, right? That is what I plan to do. And what just khutbah salah, bas, no talk. I mean, everybody is, you'll decide, but that's what I plan to do. No, but you know what will happen, right? You know what will happen? They will make an issue, how you could do that? But you know what? Half of them will pray Jummah. Right? Why? Because they believe, hey, this is a blessed thing we're doing. Qurbani. What blessed? Blessed is slaughtering. What you doing after is processing. Right? So how can a person what? You need to be what? He give preference to something which is what? That is not even what? Obligatory. That is what? Processing. You could pay somebody to do that. You don't have to do it. Slaughtering, okay, khalas, you do it yourself or somebody is done on your behalf. That is the important thing. Right? So to leave out Salatul Jummah, right? Leave Salatul Jummah because you have to, you're doing Qurbani. No, Qurbani done. Subhanallah, that day you see what? Ajaib, it's real strange things, right? Some people, khalas, Salatul Dhuhr would go, Salatul Asr would go, and they still feel they're close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How you can leave out Salatul Asr, Salatul Dhuhr, which is what? Which is obligatory. Qurbani say khalas, Qurbani is wajib, right? Qurbani is wajib, these salawat is what? Obligatory, right? And what you do over there is not even necessary. Why? Because your Qurbani finished. Alright? And my clothes have blood in it, so you didn't know that before? Watch my clothes, you didn't know that before? Right? But when we go down on the beach, we pack in what? This suit and that suit. Right? We come and see what the Qurbani meet. We are packing no suit, because why? It's not important. Alright? And we have showers here and this and that, and we'll come with that extra suit, that clothes, fast, right? And you could probably have Eid that day on what? Outside, right? You're soaking wet and you still have what? You get your salat, whatever, any arrangement you want to make. But if it falls on a Friday, you had to make arrangements. Now we had a, let me see, share that, bro, okay. Right, so 10th, 11th and 12th. If a person, in the books of Fiqh, the Fuqaha, they mention that it is what makruh and dislike to slaughter in the night. Right? But understand why they mention that, right? Because of the difficulty in slaughtering in the night, because of the lighting system, a person could be what? Injured, or these sunan aspects with regard to Qurbani, the slaughtering the animal may not be adhered to, right? Because of that. That is the only reason, right? But now at time, khalas, we have proper lighting system and this and that. So the slaughter in the night is not makruh, it's not disliked, right? Except that is what? It may be less rewarding. Why? Because the moment the night hits, comes in what you have? You have what? The second day, right? The moment the night comes in, then you have, that is what? That is the 11th. That is the second day. But that is what? You know, some students, right? They feel smart, so I make them feel smart. So I say, listen, how long, right? How long you going to take to do what? Sort out that sheep for Qurbani. Right? I say you alone. How long you take to sort out that sheep for Qurbani? 2 hours time I finish that. Right? 2 hours time he sits and see what? He sorted the whole sheep for Qurbani. Right? So now when I ask him the question, right? The last day for Qurbani is what? Is what day? You have the 10th, 11th and 12th before sunset. Right? So I say, listen, if sunset is what? Half past 6, right? And you get your goat 6:15, you feel you can handle a Qurbani? Nah. Qurbani was just a slaughter. You slaughter that before sunset, and what you process afterwards, right? Your 2 hours over there is no Qurbani, right? Your slaughter is less than a minute, right? That is your Qurbani, and what you do afterwards. So khalas, as he mentioned, right? Your slaughter. And in night time, what you sort out and you process and you bag and you whatever, right? But this, I mean, the meat, right? I mean, if you slaughter and you put it in the freezer, in the morning time, that's still soft, right? right? So you could continue next day and what? Cut up and this and that if you want, but I didn't ensure that it's the storage proper. That you know that meat spoil and alright, so the 10th, 11th and 12th. The 12th is until what? Until sunset, so it must be done just before sunset. It must be slaughtered before sunset for that Qurbani to be valid. Anytime after sunset, then you have no slaughtering, right? There's no slaughtering after the days of slaughtering, right? There's no slaughtering after the days of slaughtering. After what? The 12th of Dhul Hijjah, right? That's the third day. The moment sunset, there's no slaughtering. So a person has an animal that what he intended to do Qurbani, and for whatever reason he didn't do the Qurbani, khalas, that entire animal will be given in sadaqah. There's no slaughtering afterwards. Right, we spoke about qada for Qurbani. Right, that finish. Right, the intention. Right, and we always mention this, and we'll keep on mentioning this, so it'll be clear. Right. We always hear, right? We always hear that what? The intention in Qurbani, right? With regards to the intention, if one shareholder, right? One shareholder, his intention is not good. Just say, they say not good, right? His intention is what? Invalid, is void. Then what? The entire Qurbani, the entire bull, the entire animal, everybody Qurbani will be what? Void also, right? What's the reality to that, right? Understand? That is true, but listen, how you could say, how you have, what audacity do you have to say that what? He not doing it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. That statement itself is worse than anything else. Understand? The wrong intention is what? The incorrect intention is what? That nullifies everything is what he is doing. He is not doing Qurbani for Allah Azza wa Jal. How we could make that assumption? A person comes to perform Salah, right? How we could say what? He not performing Salah for the sake of Allah. You know, he come to meet this one. He come to see, he come and check out our work in the masjid. Yes, he could come and do all of that. You know, he had to buy bread or something, so he passed on the masjid right here, right? All of these things, right? But understand that does not negate what? A person's primary intention. Which Muslim performs Salah for other than Allah Azza wa Jal? There's a bold claim. You know, he come in the masjid what? Not to perform Salah. He come to perform Salah and he come for this, he come for that. He come to perform Salah for Allah. He not performing Salah for Allah. We can't make that statement. You understand? We can't make that statement. Understand? We don't know what the heart is. The heart that person has in his heart. Right? A person what? Even it may look obvious in the battlefield. Right? This Sahabi, he was what? Fighting with a battle. Right? And the enemy, he pinned the enemy to the ground. Enemy fighting him, he fighting the enemy, he pinned the enemy to the ground. What the enemy mentioned? La ilaha illallah. What he did? He finished him off. Because what was apparent, khalas, and most people will think that in a battlefield, why you say that? To save your skin, right? So he finished him off because listen, he just said that to what? Save his skin, save his life, right? And this is apparent, right? So a person, he went to the Prophet, and the news went to the Prophet alayhi salam, right? So this is what is apparent. He came to the Prophet, the news went to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he summons that individual, right? And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam rebuked that Sahabi to the extent that he said he wished he didn't accept Islam then. Meaning what? He wished he'd accept Islam afterwards. And that happened in his Jahiliyyah days, right? Before Islam. He wished he hadn't accepted Islam then. Meaning what? So much rebuke the Prophet what, you caught up on his heart, his chest to see what's happening in his heart. The Prophet told you, that's what you do. So how you could assume that? How you could say such a statement? But to us, yes, that's what the man do. A person die, a man die living in a multi-million-dollar estate, right? And the children what? Not Muslim. And one, accept Islam. Oh, he accept Islam to get what? Inheritance. I mean, that's probably obvious, but hey, how you could say that? Even though, hey, this looking too obvious here, boy. Right? So things like that, right? So to say a person doing other than what the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla, no, listen. Somebody taking shares with you, right? And he said, you know what? You see my share, my meat, I'm going to make biryani with it. I'm going to make kebab and burgers and he a whole many demand on plan already. So you know what? You hear that man talking? He do not feed meat, boy. I come out of that bowl. Right? We come into that just now, right? I come out of that bowl. Why? He doing what? He doing feeding meat. Listen. He not doing it for Allah Azza wa Jalla. The man making a program how he going to the meat. Understand? That day Nabi Isa mentioned هذا اليوم تشتهى فيه اللحوم and meat is desired in that day. Understand? This is what? The virtue of this ummah that Allah Azza wa Jalla has placed. You know, the previous what? The previous nations, when they did Qurbani, what would happen? It would be devoured, you can't partake from it. The spoils of war, you can't partake from it. This ummah khalas, you get to eat your Qurbani meat, boy. So there's no issue in a person planning what he's going to do with his Qurbani meat. He's going to make this and make that. That doesn't negate a person's what intention. Yes, if in a bull is a non-Muslim, become to patronize. But I'm a partner, boy. Right? They just help me out and thing. Right? I got to take a share with them. No, khalas, everybody else share done. Right? That null and void. Why? Because he's not doing it for lillah. Right? Even though he might say, yes, my meat I'm going to give it to the poor and this and that, right? But he doesn't have any iman. He doesn't have what iman. He's not a Muslim. So khalas, that would be null and void, right? So this is something very important that we need to understand, right? We cannot understand. If you say what he not doing it lillah, what are you doing? You're negating his iman. You're negating his Islam. You're negating his what? His ikhlas. You're negating his... No, we can't do that, right? But yes, as I mentioned, right, when you click, right, 250 to go what, this place, right, click, and John clicked to and sent $200, right, you have what, Zaid, Bakr, Umar, Khalid, Talha, and you have John in that bowl, right, so the whole bowl, what, spoiled. Now, so far, okay, I gotta stop here. Inshallah, we'll continue. We have about 2 sessions again. Right, we might finish it next week or the following week. Any questions?
If you have one fast question,
The question fast, honestly, the answer will be faster. Yeah. Go ahead.
This brother has the exact answer, right? He purchases that wood. He take from the answer that he have to purchase this wood. That would die. Now, we no longer have that answer. We mentioned that once a person has answer, when it puts down and will die, that's what it said. But he takes from that exact amount he had, exact answer. Purchase the wood, that drop on that amount drop. So no longer has answer.
Right, so inshallah, question like this, right? Inshallah, one day people get smart, right? One day people will get smart, right? And move away from the what? The silver nisab to the gold nisab. Understand? The silver nisab, this is what happens using the silver nisab, right? And this is what we mentioned to the people, right? Using the silver nisab does not show richness, right? Understand the concept of what? The concept of zakah, the concept of charity in the Sharia, right? A person when he gives zakah, right, how much he remains with, how much he parts with 2.5%, how much he remains with? 97.5%. This is how zakah operates, this is how charity operates. You understand? And by using the gold nisab, this is closer to that. If your silver nisab is what, $3,000, right? And you want to get a nice what? Do Qurbani with a nice sheep, a nice ram, right? You paying what, $3,000 for that, right? You paying $3,000 for that. So it means that the Sharia what? Mandate that a person what? Use all of his wealth to what? Fulfill a religious obligation? No, that is not the Sharia. That is not the Sharia. And as you rightly mentioned, according to the Fuqaha, if Qurbani is obligatory upon a person, he purchases an animal, he purchases an animal and that animal dies, then he has to replace it. So partner, we have to go and borrow money. That is on the Sharia. Understand? If you use the gold nisab, khalas, that could be facilitated, right? That could be facilitated, right? So this whole thing about, okay, using what is silver nisab, because I did this, understand? At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, your money could be what in silver and gold, it will be the same. You have 200 dirham, that is what, you have to pay zakah. You take your 200 dirham and exchange it to what dinar, gold coins, you get 20. That is the nisab, you have to pay zakah. So however you keep your money, right, it had the same value, gold, any gold and silver, right, the dirham and the dinar. Now we live in a time that what, the value of the silver is about 20 times lower than that of the gold, right? So now you're telling that person, you know what? Yes, the fuqaha mentioned what is more beneficial to the poor, we use that. Yes, they did mention that. That is when there was a slight disparity, right? Now understand the whole concept of zakah. تُؤْخَذْ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرَدُّ عَلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ. It is taken from what? The rich and given to the poor. So now you taking what zakah and qurbani from what? A man that has just $3,000, have a wife to mind, children to mind, bills to pay, groceries to buy. We have to be out of our head, right? And still say it is obligatory upon you to do qurbani. How it is obligatory upon a man to do qurbani if he has $3,000, $4,000, $5,000? Sharia doesn't operate like that. You have 40 goats, how much you give in zakah? A 140th by one, you give 1 out of 40, remain with what? 97.5% of your wealth. The Sharia would never mandate that a person what? A person would give his entire amount of wealth or that amount of wealth to what? For a religious obligation. No, it don't work like that, right? But sadly, many people, what, they go with the silver and they use the silver and they saw this and that, right? And they say, you know what? More people paying. Okay, yes. More people paying. Where's the question? Answer the next question. Who they paying? More people paying. Who they going to pay? So you're taking from the poor and giving to the what? The poorer. Right? Who you going to find in Trinidad, probably who living in a ply house or whatever, that don't have what? $3,000. The government giving you $3,000, $3,500 for the month. Why is that the government giving the old people what? Free ride from here to Port of Spain. They're giving you a cedar tablet and what? Because they understand that $3,500 only caters for the basic needs of one individual. Now you're telling a man he has $3,500, he has a wife and a family and children and rent and everything to pay. You tell him, hey, you have to pay zakah. That is man supposed to receive in zakah. But you know, no, you cannot receive, we have to pay. No, this is, right? So that is a whole discussion by itself, right? And if you want to just use the emotions and this one say and that one say, well, right? For qurbani, listen, don't use it for zakah and qurbani if you use something else. It don't work like that. If you're using what? Silver for what? Zakah, you use that right through, right? So you have $3,000, go and get a ram for $3,000 and buy a knife and this and that and skin it. And go and borrow money now to go and what? If it happen to pass away, right? Happen to die, go and borrow money now to go what? Buy next one, right? And if you think this is the Sharia, well then, anyhow, we'll stop over here. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha
يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي وروحي أحرفي ولساني